He died suddenly at the company due to overtime. Fortunately, he had a chance to start over again. Although he was dressed in a courtyard full of emotions and not in the best era, it was already very good for him. He cherishes the opportunity to do it again and strives to live a good life, whether it's a romantic quadrangle or a bird-filled quadrangle. Fortunately, he had his own golden finger, which allowed him to live well even in this era of scarcity. Keywords of the novel. Free days in the courtyard with no pop-ups, full collection download of Free Days in the Courtyard TXT, latest chapter reading of Free Days in the Courtyard. Chapter 1. Sudden Death Crossing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Sudden Death Crossing. Zhangyu, haven't you finished work yet? I still have a bit of work to do, so I guess I'll have to stay up all night today, Zhangyu sighed, feeling unlucky for him. He had just been transferred to a newly established team as the leader, which was a busy time. A group of more than 20 people, only half of them work, while the rest are either interns or related parties. Thinking of this, Zhang Yu's head grew bigger again. Originally, being promoted was a happy thing, but he had no idea that the company was looking for someone to clean up the mess. You don't know, there are only 1 or 2 capable people under my command, and all this work has been piled up with me. Your group. A friend who was originally envious of Zhang Yu's promotion now had endless sympathy. If he were to encounter this situation, he would probably rather resign than continue to bear the blame here. Why don't I work with you? My friend gritted his teeth and said as he looked at the pile of documents piled up next to Zhang Yu. For someone to help, Zhang Yu was very tempted, but looking at the dark circles on his friend's face, he thought that he had been working continuously for several days, and now he can finally get off early. Forget it, you better hurry home. My sister-in-law is still waiting for you at home, and you've been busy for several days. Go back and rest quickly. I'll finish my work in a while. Seeing that Zhang Yu didn't seem to be joking, do you really need my help? Then I'll leave first. Let's go, hurry up and go home. If we don't go home again, your daughter will probably know you. After his friend left, Zhang Yu made himself a cup of coffee and continued typing on the keyboard. Actually, he doesn't really enjoy drinking coffee, let alone the sugar cubes today. But without it, he really can't persist in completing the following tasks. I don't know if it's his illusion, but I've been feeling heartbroken these past few days. After rubbing my heart, Zhang Yu wanted to quickly finish his work and take a day off tomorrow to go to the hospital for a physical examination. He can't have anything to do, he also needs to take care of his aunt and uncle. Thinking of his aunt's family, Zhang Yu seemed to have the drive to quickly handle the work at hand. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Zhang Yu could no longer hold on, feeling chest tightness and shortness of breath, with an accelerated heartbeat and dizziness. 2 minutes later, Zhang Yu covered his chest and fell head down, never getting up again. The next morning, screams echoed throughout the entire floor, and 10 minutes later, ambulances and police cars rushed one after another. Let's go with the times. The doctor dressed in white said to the family members and company leaders waiting at the door. This kind of thing is no longer uncommon in today's society. The situation of sudden death caused by staying up late and working overtime has become more and more frequent in recent years, and it is becoming increasingly younger. It's just a pity that young man, looking young, has just begun his life. Zhang Yu watched in a daze as the hospital announced his death, and his aunt and uncle, who had raised him to adulthood, cried uncontrollably upon hearing the news of his death. Meanwhile, his so-called father and stepmother started a scene in the hospital in order to demand more compensation afterwards. Zhang Yu completely lost consciousness in a burst of impact, and it was a long time before he sat up from the bed with his head covered. Looking around, the antique rooms are quite spacious. Then a wave of information rushed into his mind, and Zhang Yu slapped his almost exploding head and fell down again. After a while, he sat up again and finally understood what was going on. He was reborn in the capital in 1958, but no matter what, he held immense gratitude and respect for being able to regain his life. Recalling the past, when he was 5 years old, his parents did not divorce him and neither of them wanted him. It was his aunt and uncle, who were not from a very good family, who took him away from that cold home and resolutely decided to raise him. Although he is not his biological cousin, he also has things that his cousin has, and he never treats him as an outsider in terms of food and clothing. The saddest thing about my own death is probably my aunt's family, but fortunately, my compensation and the money I have saved from work should be enough to support my aunt and uncle in their retirement. As for his father and stepmother, he looked forward to their desperate situation, as he had left behind more than one will, and the will had been specially notarized to prevent such situations. He thought that one day in the event of his unfortunate passing, all the assets under his name would still belong to his sister-in-law's family, and others would not receive a penny. Based on the memories in his mind, Zhang Yu looked around and realized that the original owner was only 15 years old this year. Due to his parents being soldiers, he was raised by his aunt and uncle, just like himself. The original owner's parents did not take good care of their health during this chaotic era, so they did not have children until they were 32 or 3 years old. Therefore, the 3 cousins of the sister-in-law's family were all older than the original owner, and they also took good care of the original owner, a younger brother who had been in poor health since childhood. The parents of the original protagonist, who were serving in the military in another city, may have been unable to accompany him due to guilt. Every month, they would send back half of their salary to him as living expenses, while the other half would be used to support their comrades in arms and the families of martyrs. I have also saved a lot of money over the years from my 20s to my 60s before I passed away. Based on his memory in his mind, he dug open a blue brick under the bed and took out a small wooden box. Inside were several bundles of money, 2 passbooks, and 5 gold bars weighing half a pound. Not counting gold bars, he has over 200 yuan in cash and a 6,000 yuan passbook in total. Apart from the salary that the original owner's parents have sent back for so many years, the remaining amount is the money that the original owner's mother gave him in private. His aunt and uncle opened an account for him to save on his own, and he basically never moved it. The other passbook is a pension of 2,000 yuan. And the place where he currently resides is at the back of a courtyard house, which was purchased by his parents when he was 6 or 7 years old. There are 2 rooms in total, with a miscellaneous room of about 10 square meters, which is now under his name. My aunt and uncle's family live across from him, with 2 main rooms and a small side room. Before that, the small side room was occupied by my cousin. The larger main room was divided into 2, and my second and third cousins lived in 1 room. The oldest cousin lived with the original owner in 1 room, and it wasn't until last year when the original owner entered junior high school that he moved out of his cousin's room. Thinking of the kindness of his aunt's family towards the original owner, and recalling their appearance, Zhang Yu suddenly realized a strange resemblance to them in his aunt's family. When Zhang Yu saw the original owner's appearance in the mirror, he was even more shocked. The body in front of him was almost no different from when he was in his teens, but because his body was not much weaker and pale, perhaps this was his past life. Xiaoyu, do you still have a headache? A middle-aged woman pushed the door in. Zhang Yu looked at the face in front of him, which was extremely similar to his previous life's sister-in-law, and he was even more convinced that it should be his own past life. There's one more thing. He leaned against his sister-in-law and watched her examine his injuries around, feeling incredibly relieved. I'm lucky this time. I won't dare to play around with them again in the future. Upon hearing his sister-in-law's words, Zhang Yu recalled that the reason for his injury this time was nothing more than several nearby courtyards, a considerable portion of which were houses of former government officials, military officers, and the destitute aristocrats of the late Qing dynasty. After the founding of the People's Republic of China, for various reasons, those who were able to run would all bring gold, silver, and a few antes to run, and the houses would naturally be filled with public funds. Later, these houses were allocated to factory workers for rent, and as more people lived there, there were more issues. This time, it was because the children in the courtyard they are currently living in had a conflict with the neighboring courtyard, shouting for help each. When they started fighting, the original owner was hit hard and knocked down. His forehead hit the stone step at the door, and he never woke up again. I know, Auntie, I will definitely avoid it a bit in the future. Yes, I will have dim sum eyes in the future. When I see danger, I will hide quickly. You are the only one in the family. If something happens to you, it will really hurt my heart. How can I explain to my brother and sister? Law. After watching him eat the medicine, Zhang Guixiang tucked him in and then left the door with confidence. Due to medication, Zhang Yu fell asleep in a daze. In the middle of the night, a ding sound woke him up, and mechanical sounds rang in his ears. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the check.in system. I didn't sign in today, do you want to sign in? Zhang Yu was stunned for a while, this is his golden finger in the account. Ding, this check.in has received a newcomer bonus. Do you want to check.in? Sign in, sign in. Zhang Yu, who had come to his senses, quickly opened his sister.in.law's flashlight placed next to his pillow because he was worried about getting up and falling in the middle of the night. The flashlight lit up the clock next to him, and it was already 11:58 p.m. He hesitated for a while, and it was estimated that he would not be able to sign in today. Ding, congratulations to the host. Successfully signed in and received a rare reward Space Secret Realm fragment, worth 50 yuan in cash, 20 pounds of black pork, and 20 pounds of rice. At the moment when the system sound sounded, he seemed to know about an unknown space, which contained a crystal fragment, 5 brand new 10 yuan cash, pork, and rice. Based on the novels he has read before, I think this is the system space. In check.in, what he is most interested in is probably the fragments of the Space Secret Realm. Thinking of this, he took out the crystal and said, how should the system open the secret realm? After asking several times in a row, the system still remained silent. It seemed like it was just a check.in system, without intelligence. Thinking of this, Zhang Yu felt relieved. He may not be able to tolerate a smart creature that is active in his mind and may even perceive everything about himself. According to the novels I have read before, I should now shed my blood and acknowledge my master. Zhang Yu bit his fingertips but didn't bite through them. He touched the gauze on his forehead and his eyes lit up. Then, he lifted the gauze a bit and pressed the crystal against the slightly bleeding wound on his forehead. As the crystal gradually melted into liquid and entered his body, he suddenly saw a space of about 10 meters in length, width, and height. Upon closer inspection, although it was not as plantable as described in the novel, the space inside was still. The most important thing was that the space was rooted in his own soul. As long as his soul remained immortal, he could always possess it without worrying about the space disappearing inexplicably. Looking at the space in front of him, Zhang Yu thought for a moment and then dug open the blue bricks under the bed again, stuffing the money storage box into the space, which was the safest place. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Heard of Love in a Courtyard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Heard of Love in a Courtyard. The next day, the sunlight outside fell on my face, making me feel warm and radiant. Zhang Yu gradually woke up and took a breath of fresh air from the 1950s, feeling refreshed. A noisy and knocking sound echoed outside the door. Xiaoyu, are you awake? Wake up, Auntie. Zhang Guifang pushed the door in and saw her nephew leaning against the bedside. Although his face was a bit pale, he had a lot of energy before finally letting go. These past few days have frightened her. My elder brother and sister.in-law have just been buried, and my nephew has also had an accident. Now recalling the scene of the accident, her heart is constantly tugging. Not only is her nephew the only bloodline of the Zhang family, but she has been in pain since childhood, even more than her own son. She can't let go of it for a moment. As he was speaking, the room was crowded with people. The middle-aged man who was leading the way was holding eggs and pastries in his hand, slightly bowing his waist and saying, "Guifang, how is the child? I only found out about this today, silly pillar." Apologize to Guifang Auntie quickly. "Auntie Guifang, how are the Xiaoyu brothers? It's all my fault. I didn't see Xiaoyu during the fight that day, so I accidentally pushed him over." A young man beside the old man touched his head in a daze, his face flushed with excitement. Then a group of people apologized one after another, and he also extracted some information from these words. Silly Zhu. From hearing an old man to being silly Zhu, Zhang Yu suddenly had an ominous premonition. He may not have been reborn through time in normal history, but rather into a quadrangle filled with historical plot. Thinking only of the right and wrong in the courtyard, Zhang Yu's head was getting bigger. Turning his head, he secretly felt fortunate that he had not yet been reborn in the neighboring courtyard. That was the real life of a chicken flying dog. I learned from my memory that the neighborhood relationship in the courtyard I am currently living in is quite harmonious. When he was injured that day, it was several neighbors in the courtyard who took turns carrying him to the hospital. In the courtyard, except for the family members of the employees, all are retired military personnel's family members, which are much better than the neighboring courtyard in terms of quality and even neighborhood relations. Thinking of this, he breathed a sigh of relief. Whether he was full of love for the courtyard or full of birds, as long as he lived a peaceful life, it had little to do with him. The group chatted there for a while, wondering if he had just been injured, lost a lot of blood, and lacked energy. After listening to the conversation for a while, he yawned again. As soon as Zhang Guifang saw her nephew yawning, her words showed a sense of seeing off the guests. Fortunately, an old man saw her meaning and didn't wait for her to speak. "Guifang, I think Xiaoning is also tired. Let's go back today and come see him another day." "Xiaoyu, it's silly Zhu's fault this time. I've already scolded him, how are you recovering?" She then placed the things in her hand on the table and took out a stack of money from her pocket to give to Zhang Guifang. "Xiaoyu has lost blood this time. You can buy more supplements for him to make up for it." After the group left, he recalled the scene of a courtyard house in a TV drama, but due to work reasons, he only watched it with his sister-in-law for a while when he returned home. I only vaguely remember that he Zhu was a chef in the cafeteria of the third rolling mill, known as Silly Zhu, entangled with the widow Qin Huairu. He is a close rival to the film projectionist Su Damao and often keeps hitting back and forth. The first uncle has no children, and he is foolishly planning to stay with Qin Huairu to care for him. The second uncle beats children, and the third uncle is stingy and calculating. Su Damao married Lu Xiaoyi, divorced her, and even reported his former father-in-law's family. There were famous plot twists such as Stick Memes stealing chickens, and Su Damao disrupting blind dates. After thinking for a while, I didn't think much of it. This year is only 1958, and the plot of the courtyard house should not have started yet. The plot of the TV drama began in 1965. When Jia Dongshu was dying, Xiao Hohot had not yet been born. In 1965, Xiao Huaihua was 3 years old. Based on this calculation, he should have died in 1962. Shaking his head, he stopped thinking about these things. They had nothing to do with him. The most important thing now was to take good care of his body. Perhaps due to premature birth and not having breastfed since childhood, his health has not been very good. It can be said that he grew up so healthy, and his aunt and uncle wasted countless efforts. Unfortunately, due to a fight, he was affected and lost his life. Shaking his head, he threw away the thoughts in his mind. His family's life was already considered above average, but for him who had experienced later generations, it was still a bit difficult. But being able to live again and have a new life is not an insurmountable problem. The most important thing is that he still has a system, and when it comes to the system, he remembers that he hasn't checked in yet. Is the system available? Check in. Ding, congratulations to the host. The check that IN was successful and you received 5 yuan in cash, 5 pounds in grain tickets, and 5 pounds in meat tickets. Zhang Yu couldn't help but laugh as he looked at the extra cash and receipts in the space. With these things, he should be able to spend these 3 years peacefully. As for the following years, his identity as a martyr, his uncle as a police officer at the police station, and his sister in law working on the street were enough to protect him tightly. Yesterday, I went to bed early due to the wound, only knowing that my system has a check.in function, and there has been no specific research yet. After careful study today, I realized that checking in every day can earn you money, receipts, knowledge, and everything from heaven and earth. The obtained items will be in the system space, but once taken out, they cannot be placed back in the system space. Thinking of this, I am grateful that I drew a secret realm fragment on the first day of the lottery, which can be used to place items that were taken out of the system but cannot be digested at once. If the items obtained from check.in are live animals, they will only move after taking out the system space. Another point is that there will be critical hits on weekends, end of month, and major holidays every week to gain more. After roughly understanding the check.in system, I sorted out my own situation. He is 15 years old and is in the second year of junior high school. In just over a dozen days, he will be taking the middle school entrance examination. Thinking of this, Zhang Yu quickly recalled the content of middle school in the original owner's memory, but found that he didn't know whether it was because those memories were not deep enough or because they were not so important to the original owner. When Zhang Yu recalled, he always felt like those memories were covered in a veil, blurry, and most of them couldn't be remembered clearly. Zhang Yu searched for a book by the original owner and flipped through it, discovering a sad fact that he did not inherit the original owner's memory of learning. The content of learning in this era is still relatively shallow. As a subsequent college student, he can crush many knowledge of middle school students in this era, so naturally he is not afraid of middle school content. But when he roughly flipped through those books, he realized that he had thought it simple. Although textbooks of this era were simpler than those of later generations, the content was different, which means that most of the articles he had memorized before were not useful. In this way, he needs to consider whether to continue studying. Even if he continues studying, he will have to wait until he regains his original memories of learning or works hard to reread those books in private. Just as Zhang Yu was worried about this, he suddenly found a solution from his vague memory. After the sacrifice of the original owner's parents, the military not only sent him a pension, but also gave him a job spot, which solved his biggest problem at present. These days, he feels incredibly happy, and his family can be said to have taken care of him meticulously. Every meal will be delivered to his bed, and his cousin will also bring the food to his room to accompany him to eat. The thoughtfulness of his family comforted him from the tension and confusion brought about by traveling through time and space, and also strengthened his determination to take root in this time and space. In the following days, he took steps to take good care of his body. In his spare time, he stole or found all the books of the original owner, began to learn from the primary school textbooks, and tried to be the same as the original owner. He also missed the middle school entrance examination due to health reasons. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Work you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Work relying on the reason that his body did not recover, Zhang Yu avoided the high school entrance exam. After the exam was over, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and finally survived, buying himself at least a year of time. In this year, he needs to learn the knowledge learned by the original owner and transform himself into the original owner. After finishing the exam, he also obtained the middle school entrance exam paper through some means. After reading it, he couldn't help but scratch his head. For him, most of the questions were not too difficult, but he had not memorized those basic texts, and some of the questions might not be answered. For Zhang Yu now, the biggest difficulty is Russian. After all, in later generations, most people are learning English, and few people are learning Russian. However, after these few days of learning, he has completely unlocked some of the memories learned by the original owner, which is both useful and useless for him, as most of this is what he has learned in the past few days. I don't know if it was because he let go of the pressure, but his stomach suddenly became hungry. He rubbed his stomach, tidied up his clothes, and walked towards his aunt's house. As soon as they arrived at the door, they smelled a fragrant aroma. Some children were smelling it at the door, but due to good education, although they were greedy, they would not gamble at other people's doorstep. "Auntie, what delicious food did you make?" She pushed open the door and shouted loudly, looking inside. Her cousin and uncle looked at the newspaper seriously on the surface, but in reality, their eyes kept drifting towards the kitchen. "Siheyuan, you're awake. How are you doing?" She wiped the water off her hands on her apron and walked out of the kitchen. "Today I'm resting, and I happened to run into someone selling an old hen at the pigeon market. I won't grab one, but I'll make up for it for you." "Goo, you're so kind, I know you love me the most." Zhang Yu, relying on his young age, said those kind words crazily from his mouth as if he didn't want money. "You child," Zhang Guifang was dizzy by her nephew's kind words, and her whole heart was warm. Having a few children, she has been independent since childhood and can handle most things on her own, without experiencing the sense of achievement of being a mother. But here with this maternal nephew, she experienced another feeling of her mother. "Stop fussing, get a bowl to eat quickly." As soon as they heard the word eat, my uncle and cousin quickly stood up from their seats, one holding a bowl to serve rice, and the other bringing the dishes over. Due to poor years and insufficient supply, they haven't eaten meat for a long time. Sitting at the dinner table, everyone was focused on eating, and my aunt and uncle occasionally put good meat into his bowl. After finishing the meal, I rubbed my stomach and sat in the living room discussing things. "Siheyuan, I met your middle school teacher today and he asked me if you want to go back and study for a year in middle school." The family said Zhang Yu's grades have always been very good, but due to health reasons, he did not participate in the middle school entrance examination and was unable to enter high school. His family has been very regretful about this. "Uncle, I think I want to use that work indicator." After hearing Zhao Wenshua's words, Zhang Yu's alarm beeped in his heart. Before he could fully unlock the knowledge of the original owner, he must not encounter a teacher who knew the original owner very well. "You child, your grades are so good, why don't you want to go back to school to study?" Zhang Guifang became anxious when she heard this, thinking about whether her nephew felt embarrassed because he didn't take the middle school entrance examination this time and didn't want to go back to school to continue his studies. "Auntie, Zhang Yu didn't know what to say for a moment. He wanted to say something, saying that he didn't want to learn, or that he had forgotten those knowledge, or even directly said that he wasn't the Zhang Yu they thought he was. He's not crazy yet, okay? He doesn't know if his current body can return to the future after death, but he dare not gamble his life on it, let alone that even if he can really go back, his future body may have been burned to ashes long ago. Reviving this time was already a pity from heaven, and he didn't believe he could have such good luck again. However, Zhang Yu was a bit unwilling to say that he wouldn't go to school. Even though he was ignorant, he knew the importance of education in this era. The job grades assigned to junior high school graduates and college graduates were completely different. In later generations, he always knew a truth that for children from their families, learning was their only way out. He is not the kind of person who is too smart. He has read books for so many years in later generations, but he has paid a great price to maintain his so-called top position. Especially in the small county where he grew up, the educational resources were scarce, and even the top few of the school did not have much competitiveness. So in order to get into a good university, he really suffered a lot. Now whenever I think of that dark senior year in high school, where there is no daylight, and when I open my eyes, I just read, memorize, and write. Because I've been scratching my ears and cheeks for a long time, but I can't figure it out. I can't help but feel a chill when I look back. Even if he goes to college, he doesn't slack off. The competition pressure in college is even greater, especially for children from poor families. If they want to get ahead, they can only work harder than others. But the final result did not disappoint his efforts, and he achieved the carp leaping over the dragon gate through learning. He, a child from the countryside, has established a foothold in the city through his achievements in learning. So for him, learning is the only thing that won't disappoint him. But his current situation simply cannot return to school. The knowledge in his mind that is incompatible with this era, once exposed, will definitely bring him catastrophic consequences. So now there is a job opportunity, and he wants to work for a period of time first. During this time, he can integrate into the world well, and after a year, he can hand over this job to his cousin who has been taking care of him and has not yet worked. But with such good grades, it would be a pity not to continue studying. Besides, that job is too far away from home, and all the back and forth time is wasted on the road. You're not in good health, how can you hold on? Zhang Guifang still felt a bit unwilling. Auntie, listen to me. I'm thinking of finding someone to exchange that job for a lighter job nearby, and it's okay if the salary is lower. Someone will definitely exchange it with me for the sake of salary. Xiaoyu's idea is also good, Guifang. I heard that Xiaoli's father-in-law is going to retire, isn't it? So who should he entrust his work to? Uncle Zhao Wenjue pondered for a long time. You said it's the one in charge of procurement at the steel rolling mill. I heard that his family hasn't taken over yet. His son has a job, his daughter-in-law is in a supply and marketing cooperative, and his daughter can't do the procurement work. In addition, isn't his daughter working at the textile factory? It's just that Xiao Li's work is far away from the textile factory, and the couple often can't see each other. As a street clerk, Zhang Guifang is basically clear about various rumors in the street. As she spoke, her eyes suddenly lit up and she turned her head to look at her husband. Are you saying? Well, you see, Xiaoli and his wife are far apart. His daughter-in-law lives in his father-in-law's house all year round, and he doesn't have many relatives here. I remember Xiaoyu's job was near a textile factory, right? Isn't it safe for both families to change jobs when the time comes? Zhao Wenjue calmly took a sip of tea. Furthermore, the steel rolling mill is only about 10 minutes away from our home. Okay, that's it. Before the whole family could react, Zhang Guifang rushed out in a hurry. You slow down, Zhao Wenjue could only sigh at her impatience. But wasn't it precisely her glamorous appearance and outgoing personality that attracted me back then? Looking at my uncle's sweet expression, a few young people who had never been in love couldn't help but shiver. Zhang Guifang went faster and faster, and returned in less than a quarter of an hour. Excitedly, he said to him, Xiaoli agreed. He just got on the bike and went to find his father-in-law. I am truly my sister-in-law, I am just amazing. The group gathered around Zhang Guifang, praising her for being the actual head of the family who controlled the financial power of the family. However, they were in charge of whether they ate coarse grains or fine grains, and whether they drank the wind or meat. Before going to bed at night, the matter of changing jobs has been discussed. Xiao Li's father-in-law has only one son and one daughter, so he naturally desires his children to surround him. As a driver who is away from home all year round, my son really wants the company of his child. I am worried that the couple's workplace is too far away, and it will be okay for a while. Over time, it will definitely hurt our relationship. Most importantly, the couple still have no children. This time, we finally had the opportunity to transfer them together, so naturally we will not let it go. The two families discussed and opened a letter of introduction the next morning before going to work at the company. Then, Zhang Yu was urged by the family to go to bed quickly, rest up, and leave a good impression on the leader. Zhang Yu obediently returned to his room, but it was still early and his habit of falling asleep in the latter half of the night in later generations still affected him. Before going to bed, I signed and received 2 yuan in cash and 10 pounds of soybean oil. The items in the carefully organized space have been put into the space for review these days, coupled with his health not yet good, and he currently does not have any channels to buy things. Therefore, the items he signed in for were not looked at much, so he placed them in the space. In just over a dozen days, he has saved up a lot of things. Taking advantage of this time, he can tidy up and start working tomorrow. In the future, he will have reason to take out the things to provide subsidies to his family. Without careful organization, I haven't found anything yet. I have gained a lot in the past decade or so. Light cloth requires 5 pieces, 1 big red, 2 military green, 1 blue, and 1 blue. You should know that one piece of cloth is about 33 m long. Although the cloth in this era is narrower, the quantity is definitely quite large. 150 kilograms of corn flour, 100 kilograms of white flour, as well as 80 kilograms of rice and 30 kilograms of millet. Oil, even more so, was drawn into a large cylinder, full of 300 pounds, which was drawn together with cloth. That day was exactly the first day of the middle school entrance examination, and it happened to be the second Sunday. With a double blow, there were fewer bills and other items. Seeing the last area, he couldn't help but start to crave. Although he had just eaten meat today, he couldn't resist the fact that the people of this era were too short of oil and water. The last area was filled with over 50 pounds of pork and 2 old hens. Looking at what was inside, Yu secretly decided to find an excuse to take it out someday. After reading it, I went through everything I said and did during the day in my mind again, making sure there were no mistakes and no one doubted that he was not the original owner. That's when I breathed a sigh of relief. The next morning, Yu, dressed in a formal attire, was taken out by his aunt and uncle and found a job. Considering his age and physical condition, as well as his status as a martyr's relative, Director Wang of the logistics department at the steel rolling mill arranged for him to work in an office. After 2 years, when he grows older, he will be arranged to go on field work. Siheyuan takes over the job, won't he go to school? Director Wang and Zhao Wenjue chatted. The two were old friends in the army and retired together. After retiring, one went to the police station and the other went to the logistics. This child is very thoughtful and cares too much about other people's thoughts. He didn't take the exam this time because he was injured, always worried about someone gossiping, and felt that not getting into high school would drag me and his sister law down. He refused to go back to school no matter what. If I don't agree, I'm worried that he might think too much, but if I agree, I always feel it's a pity that he doesn't go to school. Zhao Wenjue was also worried about this, but he also thought about it. Siheyuan is still young now, and delaying for a year is not a big deal. He plans to let Siheyuan go, which can be considered as letting him experience it outside. Next year, he will also send Siheyuan to school. Regarding the difficulties faced by his comrades, Director Wang naturally took it upon himself to flick the cigarette ash on his hand and said, "How is Siheyuan's performance?" "Not to mention anything else, my grades are definitely not bad, that's why I feel regretful," Zhao Wenjue said with pride on his face. "If the grades are good, it's good. My father-in-law happens to be the vice principal of a high school. Take Siheyuan's usual exam results and go to the school to see if he can put on his student registration first. Then he can study while working, and maybe he can also take the college entrance examination with others." Can it still be like this? How can it be like this? As long as Siheyuan's grades are not bad, everything will be easy to handle. Adding another student, they can still do it. "Thank you, I'll treat you to a drink another day." Zhao Wenjue patted Director Wang's shoulder and said nothing about their comradeship. "Don't worry, I'm taking care of Siheyuan here." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Fishing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Fishing. Activate today's check.in. Ding, successful check.in. Congratulations to the host for receiving 3 yuan in cash and 8 fish. Looking at the check that in result, Zhang Yu was quite satisfied, as each of the 8 fish weighed over 5 pounds. Because he can only start work on Monday and today is only Tuesday, with 5 days left until work, Zhang Yu had the idea of wandering around. He took this opportunity to understand the prices and prepare for future check that items to avoid missing anything. After strolling around, I have to sigh that the prices in the 1950s and 1960s were really low. Eggs cost 48 cents per kilogram, pork costs 80 cents per kilogram, rice costs 2.5 cents per kilogram, white noodles cost 20 cents per kilogram, and coarse grains cost 0.1 cents per kilogram. The fluctuation range is not too large, but because the current supply is limited and many things cannot be bought, the black market price has increased several times. Not to mention, the price of 1 kilogram of grain ticket has reached 60 cents, and it is estimated that it will be even higher this year. After strolling around and roughly understanding the prices, he walked to the meat stall where there was not much meat left, only 2 or 3 pounds of lean meat. However, seeing the long queue behind him, he stopped thinking about buying some meat to replace more. After thinking about it, even if he bought it with a meat ticket in the space, he wouldn't dare to take the meat home. My sister-in-law knows very well how many tickets she has, let alone underestimate it. In this era, the sensitivity of ordinary people can be easily discovered, and it should be noted that many spies were caught because of a small leak in some small areas. Although the meat couldn't be taken out, looking at the 8 big fish in the space, he had a new idea. He now lives not far from the West Moat, and there are passing buses. He can use the pretext of fishing to go around the moat and find an excuse to take out the fish. When I think about this, I can do whatever I want. I can find the hooks used by my old brother to fish, lines and bamboos from home, pick up a bucket and set out from home. I can take out the mantou that my sister-in-law steamed in the morning from the box and put it into the lunch box for lunch. Taking the bus straight to the West Moat, half an hour later, Zhang Yu, with a pale face, stumbled off the bus. He didn't expect the road to be so bad now. Next time we kill him, we won't take the bus anymore. It seems like we'll find a way to buy a bicycle. Xiaoyu, you're also fishing here. After a while, he finally recovered and as soon as he looked up, someone greeted him. Teacher Yan, are you also fishing? Looking up, it was the one he was most familiar with in the neighboring courtyard. After all, the school where the third master was located was the nearest elementary school nearby, where he also attended elementary school when he was a child. He has not had specific contact with the other people in the courtyard full of emotions, and does not know how far the difference is from the portrayal in the TV drama. As for Teacher Yan alone, he thinks there is no other flaw besides being stingy and calculating. However, just thinking about it, teacher salaries were not high in this era. With over 10 years of service, Teacher Yan's current salary is only over 30 yuan, and a family of 6 relies solely on his salary. Moreover, half a child eats a poor old man, and the 4 children's clothing, food, housing, and transportation are not a small expense. If there's no class this afternoon, I'll come fishing, said the third master, holding onto the frame of his glasses. Then, Teacher Yan, you go fishing first, and I'll go over there and dig some earthworms. Okay, hurry up and get busy with your work. Fishing is not an easy task, should I teach you? She looked at the lunch box in the bucket. No need, Teacher Yan, I'm just coming out to play for a while. Zhang Yu quickly waved his hand and refused, laughing. Although he knew that the third master was not bad and was just being stingy, he still felt it was better to stay away. After all, he didn't want to get involved in the right and wrong of the neighboring courtyard. Furthermore, he came fishing not only to pass the time, but more importantly, to bring out the fish that he had signed in from the system with proper names. After digging a few earthworms, I found a place that I thought was pretty good and followed the videos I watched before to learn how to make a nest. I tied the fishing hook and line and then caught the fish. Perhaps due to the good environment, he actually caught a fish because the fish was not big and he didn't use a fish slide to lift it up. A crucian carp of about 3 to 4 tails makes him drool. Good thing, catch a few more and go back and stew them in big sauce to eat. It could be a beginner's law, or it could be that he was very lucky today and found a fish nest. After a while, he caught 17 or 18 crucian carp of around 3 to 4 tails. Siheyuan, master, you've caught quite a bit. The third master, who had not caught any fish, turned around and saw his small half-bucket of crucian carp and the fish weighing over 5 pounds that he took out of the system space. His eyes were almost red with envy. It would be great if he caught it, but after all, he is a teacher and needs some face in front of his students, so he didn't speak up and take advantage. Luck, this is my first fishing trip today. Maybe it's good luck. Teacher Yen, I'm going back first. Do you want to go back together? Today's goal has been achieved, and someone has already witnessed it for me. With the mouth of the third master, I will definitely tell others. Build yourself a reputation as a skilled angler, and you will have an excuse to eat fish in the future. You go first, I'll catch some more fish. After Zhang Yu left, the third master picked up his fishing rod and stool and moved to the place where Zhang Yu had just sat. Zhang Yu, on the other hand, excitedly carried half a bucket of fish back home. The excitement overwhelmed the discomfort of sitting in the car, and he didn't actually get motion sickness. Auntie, what did I bring you? I shouted excitedly as I entered the backyard. I'm back, I heard from Mr. Zhao that you went fishing and caught it. She came back from work today, but didn't see Siheyuan. It was the steward of the yard, Mr. Zhao, who told her that Siheyuan had gone out with the same fishing rod. From here on, they could go. The courtyard they lived in had a relatively harmonious relationship, and even though his grandfather was more responsible. I caught it, Auntie, look at it, he said, holding a bucket and showing it to his aunt. Oh, there's still quite a bit of fishing, Zhang Guifang smiled as she looked at the small half-barrel of crucian carp and a big fish. Go back and wash up quickly. I'll braise crucian carp with soy sauce tonight. Your uncle happened to bring back a piece of tofu from work and make a crucian carp tofu soup. I think the big fish is still alive, so I'll keep it for a day. Your Uncle Wang will come home tomorrow as a guest, and the main course will be ready now. While cleaning up crucian carp in the yard, Zhang Guifang ran into a neighbor and said, Guifang, where did you get this fish? It looks pretty good. Siheyuan, that child is fishing in the west. He said to add a dish for me and his uncle, Zhang Guifang said proudly with a smile on her face. Upon returning to the room, Zhang Yu heard his aunt's praise from her neighbors and said she didn't care. In fact, the pride in her words was almost flying, and she couldn't help but laugh. He likes this kind of day, plain and light, with a little surprise or some delicious food to make life more fulfilling and joyful. Sure enough, in the evening, the family ate the sauce braised crucian carp and crucian carp tofu soup carefully cooked by my aunt. The whole family's stomachs were bulging, and they kept saying kind words one after another, little brother, you're not a little skilled. Brother will also go another day. Can you tell him how to fish? As a producer of fishing rods, Zhao Feng is a frequent Air Force player. He became obsessed with fishing in the past 2 years, but he returned empty-handed 9 out of 10 times, and even brought back a few small miscellaneous fish once. In my aunt's words, those few small fish are not enough to make a fishy pot. Thinking of this, Zhang Yu couldn't help but laugh and said, Big brother, forget it. If you want to eat fish in the future, I'll go fishing. You can keep your fishing skills for yourself. Do you look down on me? I've also caught fish before, okay. Zhao Feng rushed towards Zhang Yu and scratched his creaky nest. I look up to it, brother, I was wrong, auntie, help me, ha ha ha. Zhang Yu, who was hiding left and right, couldn't dodge, started begging for mercy with a trembling smile all over his body. All right. As Zhang Guifang watched the children playing around, she couldn't help but smile. What she hoped for most was a good family relationship. After the commotion was over, my aunt rescued him from my elder brother's hands. Hiding behind his aunt, Zhang Yu regained the courage to resist and provoke Zhao Feng, saying, "If you have the ability, come and catch me. If you have the ability, come out and see if I can scratch you." Zhao Feng gritted his teeth in anger as he looked at Zhang Yu hiding behind his mother with a despicable expression on his face. "No, I'm not fooled by you. If you have the ability, you can catch me first." The children were playing and laughing, talking and laughing, while my aunt and uncle watched from the side. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Building Repair. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Building Repair. The next morning, while the family was working and going to school, only Zhang Yu slept until dawn and the sun shone on his buttocks before waking up calmly. System check.in. Ding, congratulations on the host's successful check.in. Reward 1 yuan in cash and 10 pounds of pork. After the reminder stopped, Zhang Yu looked at the pork in the space. It was quite fat, but in this era, people lacked oil and water, and loved these fatty meats even more. They would take them out to improve their lives someday, and my aunt would definitely be happy to see them. Eating the rice left by his aunt in the pot, looking at his own house, even though it has been frequently maintained due to the lack of residents for several years, it has quickly become dilapidated due to its lack of popularity. Zhang Yu had it repaired once before moving in, but there was no major repair. He wanted to find someone to repair it during his free time in the next few days. By the way, I also repaired several houses of my aunt and uncle. My aunt and uncle have 3 sons and 1 daughter. My eldest brother, Zhao Feng, is 21 years old and his academic performance is not very good. He really can't continue learning. After graduating from junior high school, my uncle found a relationship and allowed him to enter the security department of a steel rolling mill. He is now a formal worker and has been working for 4 years. Zhao Lei, the second brother, is 20 years old and studies better than his elder brother. He went to a vocational school and graduated in May this year before being assigned to the publicity department of a steel rolling mill. My third brother Zhao Liang is 18 this year. He went to high school but didn't get into college, so he said he wouldn't go anything. At present, he has not found a job yet and is doing some odd jobs on the street. He had previously mentioned that he would give the job quota compensated by the military to his third brother, but his uncle and third brother still disagree. Sister, I am 18 this year and my third brother is a twin of a dragon and a phoenix. She has the best academic performance in her family and was admitted to a health school this year. She is currently studying at the school. For a day, he did basically nothing and looked up and down inside and out of the room. The courtyard they are currently living in is said to have been built by a warlord in the early Republic of China, and generally, the courtyard is slightly higher. Looking at the height of the room, he suddenly had an idea. Is it possible to make a second floor at this height? The sudden idea excited him greatly, and he immediately wanted to ask someone. Coincidentally, Grandpa Zhao passed by the door. "Xiaoyu, what are you doing?" "Mr. Zhao, I'm looking at the height of the house." "How high do you think this house is?" "This house. I see it at 4.8 meters, I turned my head to look at the house, gestured with my hand, and then said firmly, 4m8 is not bad, it's 4m8. Mr. Zhao, have you looked at the information about the house? How can you be sure it's 4m8? What else do we need to look at?" Mr. Zhao is an old fitter for many years, and he can almost see it at all, let alone this house. Son, who heard someone speaking in the nearby room, walked out with a cane. Seeing Grandpa's son come out with a cane, Zhang Yu and Grandpa Zhao quickly went to help him, which was a treasure in their courtyard. Compared to the deaf old lady who had made shoes for the Red Army in the neighboring courtyard, the Sun family is the true hero. Sun Te is in his 70s this year. Before the founding of the country, he not only purchased various urgently needed supplies from various places, but also traveled thousands of miles to deliver to our party's places, scattering all the money in his family. He also sent away his son and grandson who joined the army one after another. Now, he is alone. Moreover, in dealing with people and things, everyone has to give a thumbs up, so the people in the courtyard highly respect Grandpa's son, and Grandpa's son also explains what it means to have an old family. If there is a treasure, anyone in the courtyard who has an undecided matter likes to ask him, and most of the time he can give excellent advice. Grandpa's son, come out for a walk. Be careful. Go there, I can still walk by myself. What can I help? Seeing the two of them coming to help him, Grandpa's son smiled and waved his other hand. What are you two talking about here? Grandpa, didn't I think I was going to work soon? The house is a bit leaking and I wanted to fix it. I don't know when it will be available when I start working. Turning my head, I pointed to the house. Look, this house is quite tall. Mr. Zhao just said, this house needs to be 4m8. I was wondering if it's possible to add a partition in the middle to make it 2 floors. Upon hearing his words, Uncle Zhao's eyes lit up. In this era, every household lacked a house, and many families of 7 or 8 were squeezed into 2 rooms. Getting married was just a curtain up. You have a good idea, let me explain it to you in detail. Mr. Zhao, look at this house. It's 4m8 high, with a 2m6 space left at the bottom, a 20 cm partition in the middle, and a 2-meter space left at the top. Although it's slightly lower, it's quite spacious just for sleeping on the top. Zhang Yu pointed to the house and introduced it to Mr. Zhao. Xiaoyu, you're still young people. This house is good. I'm worried about my child getting married, and my employer won't be able to get a house. Where are we going to live? It's all settled now. Grandpa Zhao clapped his hands excitedly. Xiaoyu, wait, I'll go find your Uncle Wang and show him how to fix it. Without waiting for Zhang Yu to reply, he walked towards the front yard. After a while, Uncle Wang from the front yard came over, listened to their ideas, measured the size of the house, and took photos of the house. I think Xiaoyu's idea works. The house in our courtyard was built late and the materials used were the best. We had to make a hole in the wall and insert rough wood, and then lay the upper layer of wooden boards. It would definitely take 20.30 years. After my aunt and uncle returned home at night, they listened to his ideas and immediately sat with Uncle Zhao and Uncle Wang to discuss how to add a second floor. After discussing it, he took a 2-day leave and Uncle Wang recruited his group of apprentices, who were 1.5 yuan a day. In addition, Zhao's apprentices from the steel rolling mill came to help after work, and the house was quickly built. Taking advantage of the busy schedule at home due to the partition, Zhang Yu found an opportunity to take over the task of buying food every day. Just like today, when my aunt was steaming corn cakes on the stove, he came out to buy groceries. Coincidentally, there aren't many people queuing up in front of the meat stall today, so they should be able to buy it. Finally, when he arrived, he said, "Master, could you please give me a pound of meat?" The meat seller quickly cut off a piece of meat, weighing no more or less, exactly 1 pound. "Master, do you sell this bone?" He looked at the small piece of meat in his hand and thought to himself, thinking of a bunch of people. He happened to overlook the bone next to him. "Sell, how much do you want? If you want more, take all of this pair of big bones for 50 cents. Then, Zhang Yu paid to buy all of the pig bones back. Passing through a small alley on the way, I saw that there was no one in the alley. I took out 2 pounds of fat from the space, which was the kind of fat with almost no trace of lean meat. It happened to be the one I signed in yesterday. He shaved off some of the lean meat on top, but there was only white fat left. Sure enough, seeing the meat he bought, the aunt grinned happily and said, "This meat is good. It would be great to use it to boil oil." Seeing this fat meat, Zhang Guifang gritted her teeth and cut half of it into large pieces to stew cabbage while watching the group working hard outside. "Uncle Wang, hurry up and take a break. Come wash your hands and have a meal. After washing their hands, the group lined up with lunch boxes and said, "Brotherly, what did your boss prepare today? There will definitely be meat, I can smell the fragrance." Li Chang took a few deep breaths and quickly took the vegetables to the side, looking at the greasy dishes and 3 or 5 slices of fat with a smile. For lunch, having fatty meat stewed with cabbage and pork bone soup, the workers all praised his family's practicality. Many people are reluctant to eat, such as Li Chang, who picked and ate half of the cabbage, drank the bone soup, saved the meat and put it in a bag. Thinking happily, I would go home at night and have my mother-in-law add 2 cabbage dishes, stew them with the oil, water, and fat inside, and also serve meat for the children. The food was good and the work was done quickly, coupled with the fact that the work was not very difficult, it was almost done in 2 days. The house has been repainted with a layer of white putty, which looks much cleaner because the partitions are made of wood, so we can move in on the same day. After the house was repaired, the neighbors in the courtyard came to visit. The house was divided into 2 floors, with 3 equally sized rooms on the upper floor used as wedding rooms for the 3 brothers in the future. The room where my aunt and husband lived on the lower floor remained largely unchanged, except for the larger room that was vacated and the original partition was demolished. Most places have a living room and dining room, and in the future, there will be a fixed place to eat without having to move tables, chairs, or move for half a day every time. A small room was set up near the window to make a kitchen, so that when it rained, my aunt didn't have to cook in the rain. Looking at the newly renovated house, several children's wedding rooms have all come out, solving the biggest problem. The aunt was so excited that she pinched her uncle's arm and rubbed his painful arm. Zhao Wenjue couldn't help but laugh, and solved the problem of the house. In the future, the children's marriage problems will be better solved. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. New Residents. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. New residents. Compared to his aunt's house, Zhang Yu's house was built slower. Both houses started to be repaired at the same time, and there were more people and smaller rooms on his side. In theory, he should have completed the repairs first. But in fact, he fixed it 2 days later than his aunt. Because he repaired it more meticulously, it can be considered a major overhaul, but most importantly, he repaired the toilet. Since his rebirth, there have been not only benefits but also no drawbacks. Subsidies for food and drink are still good, but what he can't stand the most is the toilets of this era. Not only do I need to go out to the bathroom, it's okay in winter, but it's just cold. If it smells like summer. So, taking advantage of the opportunity to build the house, he repaired a bathroom. Speaking of this bathroom, the construction process is not simple. I encountered one problem after another. Although the location of his house is not very good, one advantage is that the debris room is very close to the municipal government's sewage pipeline. After finding a specialized person to measure the length, they bought a ceramic tube. To be precise, it is not ceramic, but rather a cylinder tile tube, which is the type of material used for making water tanks, with glaze hanging on the inside and outside. In order to ensure good drainage and prevent blockages from flushing down, bricks and cement were used to elevate the room that serves as the bathroom. There is no tap water, so a tank was placed to hold water and flush the toilet. After repairing it, the family excitedly tried it again and again, saying, "Xiao Ning, your idea is good. In the future, not only can you take a shower at home, but you don't have to queue up early in the morning to grab the restroom with others." Yeah. I said fixing a bathroom would be useful. After trying the toilet and feeling refreshed, the group continued to look inside. Although his house is also 2 big and 1 small, it is not as big as his aunt's house in terms of area, and the total area is only over 40 square meters. However, he also lives alone in a spacious room. We also built the 2nd floor. The original miscellaneous room on the lower floor was used as a bathroom, while the one with good lighting was used as a bedroom. A table was placed on one side, and in the future, a screen could be used as a workspace. The other room was similar to what my sister-in-law did, but the living room area was not as large due to the size of the area. The upper one has 5 houses of the same size. For his approach, my aunt is a bit strange. The house is so small that she wants him to make it bigger. But he also has his own thoughts. Although his parents divorced and didn't want him, the love given to him by his 2 lives of sister-in-law, uncle, brother, and sister was enough to free him from the fear of marriage. The beginning of a new life gave him hope for marriage. He likes children and hopes to have multiple children. For the 5 rooms, the aunt explained, "Auntie, look, although 8 square meters is not big, look at this room. It is 5 meters long and 2 meters wide, and then you can put a bed that is 2 meters long and 1.5 meters wide. Follow this arrangement, and there is still 0 or 5 meters left at the end of the bed. There is no problem, and there is still 1 meter wide next to the bed. There is still half of the space, and a small wardrobe is placed in the corner. There is now a place to get out of bed, a place to study, and a cabinet for storing things. I will have more children at that time." Upon hearing his words, the group burst into laughter. Right. How many more rooms should we build? Xiaoyu, what do you like? Do you need Wang Auntie to introduce one to you? Wang Auntie smiled as she followed the tour. I can also introduce, Xiaoyu, what do you want? Some people coaxed. No need, I'm still young, let's talk about it in 2 years. Zhang Yu quickly waved his hand, he was afraid of these aunties. Okay, what do you want, Xiaoyu? When did you want to marry a wife? Tell your aunt, and Aunt Wang will introduce you. She joked, but several aunties took it to heart. Zhang Yu, a child who has grown up, naturally has a temper and good character. It is said that the logistics department of the steel rolling mill is now engaged in procurement, and procurement has always been a department with expertise. There is a house, it is newly built, and even the future house for the child is ready. The only downside is that there is no support from parents, but isn't there any support from my aunt and uncle? Life will definitely not be different in the future. Thinking of this, with the idea of not letting the fat and water flow into the fields of outsiders, a few aunties arranged for the daughters of their relatives and friends to be of appropriate age. Upon hearing Xiao Ning's explanation, Zhang Guifang was also overjoyed and no longer found the room too small. The Zhang family now only has this unique seedling left. In this lifetime, they do not seek his wealth or power, but only his peace, marriage, childbirth, and longevity. She strongly agreed with her nephew's idea of having more children. If it weren't for his young age, she would have loved to go and take his wife home tomorrow so that she could have grandchildren. Thinking of this, Zhang Guifang wished her nephew could grow 3 or 5 years old immediately. Looking at his aunt's glowing eyes, Zhang Yu quickly interrupted her thoughts, but he couldn't let his aunt think anymore. Although he has the idea of getting married and having children, he firmly opposes the idea of getting married and having children without violating legal regulations. Although he didn't know if there was this regulation now, the laws of later generations were in his heart, and he couldn't overcome that hurdle in his early marriage heart. He still wants to be alone for a few years, and wanting to get married and have children doesn't necessarily mean taking immediate action. And he's a bit selfish about the golden finger aspect. He hopes it's his own secret and doesn't want anyone to know. Once married, spending time together day and night, with the unique meticulousness of women, one will definitely discover something different. So I also want to take advantage of these few years to find more excuses and fill the house with things that have been signed in bit by bit. After repairing the house, other families with limited space in the yard also started building a second floor. Zhang Yu, who came up with this method, always speaks highly of it. After repairing the house, it's also Monday and we will start working soon. Early on Monday morning, Zhang Guifang got up before dawn to make breakfast, thinking that it would be his nephew's first day at work and that he would have to eat something good. I took out the noodles from the cabinet, ordered some noodles, and generously fried the eggs in oil. Finally, I put some leftover pig oil residue on the noodles. Siheyuan has woken up for dinner and will be reporting to the workplace later. Got it, Auntie, I'll get up right away. Put on your clothes, wash your face, and grab your hair in the mirror. Not bad, the young man is quite handsome. Turning his head, he sighed inwardly about his immaturity. Looking at the rich breakfast, Zhang Yu felt warm in his heart. Auntie, you can eat it too, she said, taking advantage of Zhang Guifang's carelessness and dividing the fried egg and oil residue in half for her. Auntie, you can eat as long as you have enough, she said, and she also had to bring back eggs or something. Auntie, it's enough to eat. As you know, my food has never been big. Zhang Yu covered the bowl with his hand. Zhang Guifang couldn't take it back and had to eat it. The next step is to listen to Zhang Guifang teach him how to handle people and things while eating, and how to get along with colleagues. Finally, it seemed like he was afraid of being bullied. Siheyuan, get along well with colleagues, but we can't be wronged either. We can't be afraid of things if we don't cause trouble. If we're bullied, we can fight back if we can. The most important thing is to come back from being wronged and tell my aunt. Got it, Auntie, Zhang Yu promised repeatedly before being released. All the nervousness before going to work is gone now. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. First day of work. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 7. First day of work. The courtyard was only a dozen minutes away from the steel rolling mill, so it arrived quickly. To his surprise, Uncle Wang was waiting at the door. Uncle Wang, good morning. Just right, come over quickly, I'm waiting for you. He said to the security personnel and said, Xiao Zhou, I've brought you in. This is our new comrade from science and technology. Thank you, Uncle Wang. Uncle Wang came to the door early in the morning to wait for him, probably because he was afraid that someone would make things difficult for him. Following Uncle Wang, I first submitted a file and stamped it before knowing my salary. For some reasons, he skipped temporary workers, level 12 and 11 clerks, and joined level 10 clerks with a monthly salary of 27.5. Seeing himself staring at the salary table all the time, Uncle Wang smiled and patted his shoulder, saying, let's work hard. Every year, our department will upgrade some people's administrative levels, and their salaries will also increase accordingly. Then he took himself to the logistics department, clapped his hands, and said, let's get to know each other. This is the new comrade from our logistics department. After saying that, he pushed Zhang Yu to the front. Now everyone's eyes flickered and turned towards him. Zhang Yu swallowed his saliva and said, hello everyone. My name is Zhang Yu, and I joined on my first day today. Wu Chuan, Comrade Xiao is a newcomer. Take him along and let him learn from you. Okay. Director Wang, just leave it to me and rest assured. After Director Wang left, Wu Chuan began to introduce him, Siheyuan, just call me Anchor. There happens to be an empty seat next to me, you can sit here. I went to the warehouse and brought the tables and chairs. As the logistics department was in charge of the warehouse, I selected the latest ones, placed them properly, and wiped them with a cloth. Wu Chuan spoke up and said, Siheyuan, in fact, the work of our logistics department is simple and difficult. Our second department is mainly responsible for purchasing the cafeteria in the factory and supplying 1.4 cafeterias. As long as we can purchase enough materials according to the factory's regulations every month, the work will be very idle. But if there are not many channels, it can be very troublesome at times. After taking a sip of water, he continued, those who can do this job quickly, while those who cannot usually be transferred through connections. You have just arrived, and there are no mandatory purchase quotas for this month. Study hard, and you can learn it in just 2 days. After introducing the job responsibilities, Wu Chuan raised his hand and glanced at his watch. It's almost lunchtime. I'll take you to change your ticket. Our factory requires a meal ticket for the cafeteria. Among the several cafeterias closer to the logistics department, the most delicious one is cafeteria number 4. Following Wu Chuan, I changed my meal and meal tickets. It was already lunchtime, and a large number of workers rushed out of various workshops towards the cafeteria. Xiaoyu, have you brought your lunch box? If not, use mine first. With it, Angkor. He took out the lunch box that his aunt had packed for him in the morning from his bag. Our Red Star steel rolling plant allocates more materials to us than ordinary factories because it is a heavy physical labor. The food will naturally have more oil and water, larger portions, and cheaper prices. So many employees will serve an extra portion and keep it for the whole family to eat at home in the evening. Wu Chuan is very proud of this. After all, in this era, food and drink are the most important things. At this moment, Zhang Yu realized that the leader Wang uncle had found for him was very good. He was not secretive about his work and was very familiar with all aspects of the factory. The two of them began to queue up, and as he looked up, he happened to see the male protagonist Hiyuzhu, who was in love with the courtyard next door, serving groceries at the window. The start time of the drama is 1965, when Hiyuzhu was 29. Based on this calculation, he has only just passed 20 this year and has not been in the Red Star steel rolling plant for long. At this moment, Hiyuzhu is not the head chef in the kitchen, because he saw an old master sitting behind everyone, pointing out the crowd. And he also recognized himself, raising his hand in greeting, "Brother Xiaoyu, are you? After I join today, I will be a regular employee in the factory. Congratulations, it was me who caused you to be injured last time." Hiyuzhu felt very guilty about Zhang Yu's injury last time. Because the last incident had nothing to do with Zhang Yu, it was actually a disaster caused by their fight. It's already over, and besides, I'm already fine now, isn't it? He also understood about the incident where Hiyuzhu and his team got into a fight and accidentally injured their original body. How to say this matter? If we have to worry about it, it's just a mess. Furthermore, he discovered a small detail from the depths of the original owner's memories, and it seemed that the person who pushed him down was not Hiyuzhu, but another person in the neighboring courtyard. And in his vague memory, the person was fighting and only pushed Hiyuzhu when he saw him passing by. Vaguely, there was a pair of eyes that seemed to carry a wicked smile. Unfortunately, there is no specific memory, and I don't know much about the person from the neighboring courtyard. I also don't know who I have formed a grudge against, so I can't describe who that person is. However, since he took over the body of the original owner, he must seek revenge on the original owner. One day when he's resting, find a few people who fought that day and ask about their specific memories. The most important thing is to figure out what exactly caused the fight that day. Because until now, the specific reason for the fight is still unclear. Several children he knows in the yard also mentioned it, and they started fighting in a daze at that time. Afterwards, it was not clear who was the first to shake the person. Turning his attention away from memories, he smiled at Hiyuzhu. "Brother, you look great. If you have anything to do with me in the future, I will definitely take care of it for you." After saying this, he scooped up nearly 2 portions of food from others and took the spoon from the soup maker next to him. He slowly slipped down from the edge, gently picked it up, and slowly picked up a spoonful full of dry goods. The people behind were waiting, but the two didn't speak much, but they looked at Wu Chuan's lunch box and then at themselves. He admires the kitchen staff who serve dishes. The soup in the kitchen is free. Basically, if you put 5 or 6 eggs in a whole pot of soup, most people will find it to be water, but it seems that there must be at least 1 egg in his bowl. Wu Chuan also looked at his lunch box and then at his own. "Let me go, Xiaoyu. Do you know the cafeteria chef? It's our neighbor from the neighboring courtyard, Angkor, eating together. Placing the lunch box in the middle, I can't eat alone." Seeing that he didn't seem to be telling lies, Wu Chuan was not polite. Zhang Yu was satisfied with a mantu, a bowl of soup, and less than half of the dishes. Seeing him stop eating, Wu Chuan was a bit puzzled and said, "Xiaoyu, why don't you eat?" "I'm full." "Is it enough to eat?" Wu Chuan was a little incredulous. The half-aged boy ate poor lousy. He remembered that when he was so old, 5 man to a meal was not enough. I'm full. I'm not feeling well and can't eat too much." Seeing that he was already full, Wu Chuan cleared out the remaining things 3 times, 5 times, and 2 times. After finishing work at night and returning home, after lying in bed all day with thoughts swirling and unable to sleep, I decided to get up and prepare to take a look at my things and prepare for the difficult times. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Planting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Planting. Zhang Yu looked at what he had on hand and spent almost all the over 500 yuan he had on repairing the house. Originally, renovating a house of this size didn't cost much, but the type of cylinder tile pipe used for toilet drainage, with glazed inside and outside, was the best alternative he could find in this era, and it cost a lot. In addition, he bought a lot of good wood for the sturdy structure of the house, which was used as a support, and finally, he used the best quality he can currently find with other scattered things, so he spent more than 200 yuan in one go. As a result, he didn't have much money in his hands before, only a few of the money in his passbook remained, but he wouldn't move the money unless necessary. Additionally, during this period, the cash reward for system check.in has been counted, approximately over 80 yuan. Now the monthly salary is 27.5 yuan, and there is also a subsidy from the check.in system, so there is basically no salary to spend. I am currently eating with my sister-in-law and her family, but occasionally I cook it myself. Before going to work, he said he had to pay for living expenses. After all, he was already working and earning money, so he was considered an adult. But my aunt and uncle never agreed, and even said that their salary and raising a few children were still very generous. Time slowly passed, and the noise of the courtyard, the sound of cooking, and the cries for children gradually dissipated and turned into silence. Leaving only a few scattered lights, adding a touch of warmth to this dark world. The chirping of insects and birds outside the window, like adding sound to the lights, also makes the night outside less monotonous. Accompanied by the moonlight outside the window, Zhang Yu fell into a deep sleep, but he did not see that the moonlight outside was intercepted as it passed through its window. The faint moonlight seeped into his body as he exhaled and inhaled. Under the influence of the faint moonlight, the fragments of the secret realm in the body began to gradually expand. However, due to insufficient energy, the expansion was extremely small. 99% of the energy in moonlight is absorbed by the secret realm, but as the moonlight flows through the carrier, although it does not intercept much energy, it also benefits greatly. These moonlight will gradually transform his body in the coming days, making him healthier and his brain smarter. The most important thing is to gradually improve his genes, making them more excellent, and these excellent genes are selectively inherited to improve the qualifications of his offspring. The next day, Zhang Yu woke up early. Although he had only slept for less than 5 hours, he was feeling refreshed and extremely comfortable. In the past, due to poor health, the burden on the body suddenly disappeared a lot. Although I don't understand the reason for all of this, as long as the result is good. Get up, wash your face and brush your teeth, wash your hands seriously, and try to improve your luck. After all, in the lottery 2 days ago, I basically didn't draw anything, only 2 cents and 10 barrels of cow dung. 10 barrels of cow dung surprised him, and he realized that it was true that the lottery could draw all things in the world. However, it may have set some unknown probabilities, so most of the items drawn were items that met the needs of life in his own era. There is only a rare chance of winning something strange. Wash your face, sit upright on the bed, and take a deep breath. System, activate today's check.in. Ding, congratulations on the host's successful check.in. Today's check.in resulted in a critical strike, earning 100 yuan in cash, 50 pounds of beef, 50 pounds of apples, 50 pounds of tomatoes, 1 pack of mixed improved plant seeds, and 10 portions of plant growth potions. Sure enough, washing hands is useful and surprisingly received a critical strike. Skipping everything else, he stared at the last 2 prizes. After carefully reviewing the introduction, the mixed plant seeds mentioned above are seeds that have been improved in the 21st century and are not limited in variety. They can be mixed with 100 seeds. Seeing this, he was pleasantly surprised. It should be noted that the crop yield of the country in the 1950s and 1960s was never high, let alone compared to later generations. From the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China to the 1980s, grain production remained insufficient and farmers suffered greatly. Now with this seed, even if there are only 1 or 2 products that can be used as staple food, it will also improve the living environment in other ways. Thinking of this, he quickly took out the package of seeds from the system space and carefully identified the seeds inside. Fortunately, he grew up in the countryside for a portion of his life, otherwise he might not have known these seeds. Through careful identification, the majority of the seeds inside are vegetables, with only 5 watermelon seeds, 5 baby pumpkin seeds, and 5 large pumpkin seeds. Seeing pumpkin seeds, although somewhat disappointed, it's not a staple food seed, but having pumpkin seeds is also good. The yield of pumpkin seeds in the future market is very huge, and the normal yield of baby pumpkin is around 4,000.5000 kilograms. If managed properly, it can reach 10,000 kilograms. If it is an ordinary pumpkin, 1 acre of land can produce about 3,000 kilograms. If special planting methods are used, such as hanging poles to plant 1 acre of ordinary soil, it can also yield tens of thousands of kilograms. And later pumpkins have a high sweetness and good palatability. Unlike various agricultural practices that were not improved in the 1950s, especially sweet potatoes from the 1950s had a lot of fiber and a poor texture. Thinking of this, he couldn't sit still anymore. There happened to be 2 at the door, 1 meter wide and 3 meters long, 1 on each side. I heard from the elders in the courtyard that the warlord who built this courtyard was clearly a big and crude person, but he followed the example of being vulgar and refined, yet he learned something different. Resulting in this round courtyard being different from a typical quadrangle and appearing strange. Not only is it taller than a typical quadrangle, but the spacing between rooms is twice that of a typical quadrangle, and there is a pre-built flower bed in front of each room door. When I moved in, I didn't know who had destroyed the flowers in the yard. The people living here are busy with their daily lives and have no time to take care of the flower beds, so they are becoming increasingly abandoned. When I was flipping over the ground, I was stunned how to do it without tools. After searching for a while, I finally found the tools that had been piled up for a long time from Grandpa Sunday. Loosen and level the soil, sprinkle all the spinach, and plant 3 watermelon seeds, baby pumpkin seeds, and ordinary pumpkin seeds. Leave 2 as backup, in case it doesn't succeed this time, it won't go extinct. After pouring water, looking at the flower beds at the doorstep of each house, he suddenly had an idea. He happened to take advantage of the time to return the tools and discuss it with Grandpa Sunday. "Grandpa, are you at home?" "I came in." "Where are you? Is that Siheyuan?" Come in, come in." "Grandpa, please sit down. I'm here to return the tools, and I'm here to ask if we can plant some vegetables or other things in the flower beds at our doorstep to fill our stomachs." After listening to his words, Grandpa's son patted his legs and stomach and said, "You and me, Uncle Zhao, are just thinking about a shortage of food and cannot provide for it. Yesterday, we were discussing where to gather some food, but we didn't expect to grow some ourselves." Then he hurriedly pulled him to find Mr. Zhao and explained the situation. Grandpa Zhao patted his thigh and said, "Why not? Our yard happens to be quite large, and with the added corners, we can grow a lot of things. I'll go notify the courtyard for a meeting now." After holding a meeting in the yard and reporting to the street office for approval, Quickly distribute the vacant land in the yard to each household without affecting traffic. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. First Procurement. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 9. First Procurement. I woke up too early in the morning, even though I had already planted pumpkins and attended the entire hospital meeting. It was only around 6 o'clock, and there was still over an hour left until 7:30 in the morning when I started working. There's nothing to do these days, so he just lit the stove and started cooking. Prepare 2 meals, one for breakfast and the other for taking to the factory as lunch. Bringing food is not because you dislike the food in the factory. In fact, the taste of the food in the factory is quite good, much better than what ordinary people make. But after all, a big stove is a big stove. Even in this era, it can already be considered oily. But after all, Zhang Yu is not entirely from this era and has seen the stir-fry of later generations, so for him, there is still less oil and water, which is not quite in line with his taste. Coincidentally, I checked in with beef and tomatoes in the morning, and there are still a few potatoes at home. I made a tomato beef stewed potato, which made my mouth water when I thought about it. First, cut the beef into small pieces, wash the tomatoes and cut them into small pieces, peel the potatoes and cut them into small pieces for later use. Although it's a bit regrettable that the system didn't check in for beef brisket, some of them were just good to eat. Furthermore, although it is not beef brisket, the meat quality is particularly good and fresh, so the step of blanching is omitted. Add oil to the pot, heat the oil and add beef and light soy sauce, stir-fry evenly, and then put it into a special clay pot. In addition, heat up the oil in a wok and stir-fry the tomatoes to make the soup. Also, place it in a clay pot. Just starting the pot twice to cook oil and letting outsiders see it, I'm afraid they will scold him for wasting it. After checking the water in the clay pot, I added some more water, seasoning, potatoes, and dried chili peppers. After stewing for more than 40 minutes, it can be taken out of the pot and eaten. When stewing meat, the aroma is overflowing, in order to make fewer people smell the aroma of cooking meat. When he was decorating, he made preparations and the entire kitchen was tightly sealed. In order to do the sealing work in the kitchen, I spent an extra 30 yuan to hire an old craftsman. Although the price is high, Zhang Yu believes it is very worthwhile and there is hardly any smell coming out. This has laid the foundation for him to eat meat in the future. Although the people in the courtyard are all good, he doesn't want to test his humanity. Some things can be better avoided from the beginning. Serve a bowl of freshly steamed rice, pour a spoonful of thick soup over it, and then add the stewed beef and potatoes. Mix well, scoop up a large mouthful with a spoon, and swallow it. The sour and sweet taste of tomatoes, the dense texture of potatoes, and the soft and rotten texture of beef blend together perfectly. Half of the freshly prepared dishes were served to my aunt, who praised his craftsmanship while saying that he was wasting it. Just give him the meat to repair his own health. Why bring so much? Zhang Yu smiled, remained silent, and made an excuse. The meal was not finished yet, so he quickly returned to his own room. It has to be said that the actions of the several masters in the courtyard were really rapid. With just 1.5 hours of cooking and eating, he quickly came up with a plan to divide the land fairly. As he had imagined, when the courtyard was divided, he found 2 flower beds at the entrance. Because there aren't many dishes, he plans to go to the countryside to exchange some seeds. Coincidentally, due to the construction of the house, the family needed to set up a warm room wine. He volunteered to purchase the necessary materials and used this as an excuse to add some of the things he had signed in with. I originally wanted to wait for the holiday, but I didn't expect to have an unexpected joy when I started working today. As soon as he started working, Angkor walked up to his desk and said, "Xiaoyu, tidy up and come with me later. I'm still a bit short on my procurement task this week. I just opened a letter of introduction and went to the countryside to see if I can purchase some materials. You followed me on a trip and happened to be teaching you some things to pay attention to during the procurement process. Let's let you do some small things, and I'll watch from the side for you to practice." Alright, Angkor, I've packed up. Zhang Yu looked at the lunchbox he was carrying and muttered to himself, I'm an unpredictable person. The two of them opened the introduction letter and went to find a large car. Wu Chuan Xiaoyu handed a cigarette to the driver in charge of driving and said, Captain Wang, I'll trouble you this time. Everything is for work, and besides, isn't the material you purchased being consumed by the entire factory? I'm also using the purchased material. Leader Wang put a cigarette in his ear and said, get on the car. We happen to have time now, let's go and get back quickly. A few people chatted non-stop along the way and soon arrived at a nearby village. After handing over the introduction letter and certificate to the team leader quickly turned on the loudspeaker and said, Attention all members of the production team, attention all members, the procurement personnel of the Red Star Steel Rolling Plant are here to purchase materials. The purchase price is as follows. 48 cents per kilogram for eggs, 78 cents per kilogram for pork, and 3 cents per kilogram for vegetables. The team member who heard the news quickly ran home and took out the eggs that had been accumulated for a long time. You should know that even if you run a long distance to deliver to the Supply and Marketing Society, each egg costs only about 5 cents, and the Supply and Marketing Society is picky. Now someone is coming to purchase, and the price has increased significantly, regardless of size or weight. Auntie, there are 2 pounds in total. This is 9.6 cents, please keep it. Auntie, there are a total of 3 pounds of eggs, 20 pounds of vegetables, with eggs costing 1.44 yuan and vegetables costing 60,000 yuan. The total is 2.04 yuan. For over an hour, team members kept pouring in, and Zhang Yu kept repeating his work, his throat hoarse. Continuously weighing and recalculating the money, shouting loudly, finally no one came over when the sky was getting dark. After looking at the gains in the car, Wu Chuan nodded involuntarily and smiled with satisfaction, I'm lucky this time. I didn't expect there to be so much inventory in the village, and I've completed more than half of the quota this month. Then he turned his head and looked at the driver and Zhang Yu, saying, there's still a little time left. We have half an hour left, and we can move freely during this half hour. Understanding his hidden meaning, Zhang Yu and the driver both smiled and each chose a direction. Zhang Yu arrived at the entrance of a house with a relatively large courtyard and said, Is anyone at home? Here, what's up? The lady who opened the door looked at her and said, Isn't this the little brother who just collected things? What's up? Auntie, I want to grow some vegetables, but I don't have any seeds. Can I find some seeds from you? Zhang Yu, who was exchanging things for the first time, felt a bit shy and had to write several drafts in his heart before he dared to speak up. Yes, there are. The seeds at home are all here. Whatever seeds you want, you can take them yourself. After saying this, he smiled proudly, Auntie, the seeds here are the most complete in the vicinity. Zhang Yu bought a large bag of seeds for 50 cents, and before leaving, the lady even dug out some of the roots of the chives that had just been cut in the corner of the wall. Young man, take these leek roots and plant them with a little water. After 10.5 months, they will grow again. Thank you, Auntie. Could you please tell me how much these are? Thank you, some leek roots are not a good thing. Take the money you want as soon as possible, he said and pushed Zhang Yu out. Looking at a large bag of seeds in my hand, I once again marvel at your simplicity in this era. Returning to the car, the three of them had a tacit understanding and did not ask each other what they had bought. Because the car was loaded with many easily broken items such as eggs, the car drove slightly slower on the way back. I didn't arrive at the factory until after 9 p.m., unloaded the goods, and received the note. Angkor announced that he can take a day off tomorrow. This is the benefit of doing procurement, as long as you can obtain materials, you can get a lot of rest time. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. First hearing of the past of Siheyuan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. First hearing of the past of Siheyuan. As he approached the courtyard, Zhang Yu found a dead end and took out the things he wanted to take home from the system. At this season, fresh pork is scarce. In order to avoid attracting attention, he took out 2 pieces of preserved meat weighing about 5 pounds each, 2 pounds of sausages, about 10 pieces, and 2 old hens. Zhang Yuji will take out these 2 chickens. It can be said that he had too much impression of the scene created by Su Dama when he watched TV dramas before. These cured meats were made by the villagers when they slaughtered pigs before the Chinese New Year, and have been kept until now. Because it requires money to take it out. Perhaps it is because he has been growing taller recently. He has been feeling cramps in his legs, so he took out a small bucket of milk. With a large family, he can definitely finish it in a day. After drinking the milk, the bucket can also be used to hold other things. Zhang Yu returned home satisfied with his large and small bags, and this procurement task finally gave him a reason to subsidize his family. If someone asks, they say they were looking for someone to exchange things in the countryside. However, the investigation is not so strict yet, and it is still allowed to exchange things. Auntie, I'm back. The door was not closed, and my aunt sat at the door waiting for him. As soon as she saw him, she quickly stood up. What did you do? You came back so late. Zhang Guifang finally felt relieved when she saw her nephew come back. Auntie, Angkor took me to the countryside today to participate in a procurement task on a last-minute basis. Because time is tight, I didn't have time to talk to you. You've only been working for a few days now, why did you go out shopping with me? The procurement task this time is relatively simple, so Angkor wants to take me to see and learn. Zhang Yu finished speaking and handed the things in his hand to Zhang Guifang. Auntie, please take the things in my hand. Looking at his big and small bags, holding 2 cages in his hand, he said, what are you carrying? So much. After completing the procurement task today and seeing that it was still early, Angkor and his team went to find someone to exchange things. I felt that being idle was also being idle, so we went together. This is what I gained today. Zhang Yu said, showing Zhang Guifang the things in his hand. Zhang Guifang saw something on his hand that was showing a little head, and quickly pulled him into the room along with the things in his hand, then quickly closed the door. Just then, he breathed a sigh of relief and asked incredulously, did you exchange all these things? Of course, Auntie, you see how good these 2 pieces of cured meat and sausages look. They only smell the fragrance, without any other flavor. She said, holding the cured meat in her hand and putting it towards Zhang Guifang's nose. Zhang Guifang carefully sniffed it and found that there was only the fragrance of meat and large ingredients. It should be noted that knowledge in this era was not circulating enough, unlike in later times when there was the internet, many knowledge would circulate online, which caused later generations to think that this knowledge was not a big deal. In this era, secret formulas are still highly valued. Many secret formulas are passed down to men but not to women, inside but not outside, and they would rather be lost than spread casually. The method of marinating cured meat in many places is usually very simple, just hanging it with salt on the floor, so there will always be some poorly marinated cured meat that smells a bit strange. For everything that Zhang Yu brought with her, my aunt touched and pondered its destination. The 2 hens received the best treatment, and the aunt urged her uncle to nail the chicken coop with wooden boards overnight. She also made a feeding basin for the old bull that had not been willing to be eliminated. At first, Zhao Wenjue had to exaggerate a bit, but the next day when he saw the 2 eggs he picked up from his nest, he thought they were really delicious. Only half of the cured meat and sausages are left, and the rest are prepared for the warm room banquet. They are planning to do it together. I was originally worried about what to cook, but now it's ready. Not only do I have the main course, but I can also prepare a few meat dishes for the rest. As for the milk brought back, Zhang Guifang was not willing to take it out, but instead gave it to Zhang Yu and his children. In Zhang Guifang's eyes, milk is a good thing. Since the supply has decreased, the milk provided on the streets is often intermittent and the quantity has decreased significantly compared to before. Zhang Guifang originally thought that her nephew was not in good health and wanted to leave more for him, but Zhang Yu refused on the grounds that the weather was hot now and he couldn't drink until tomorrow. In order not to waste, a few people drank milk and were satisfied, then covered their stomachs and discussed how to make warm room wine, how many people to invite, how many dishes to cook, who to invite, and who not to invite. Zhang Yu will be resting tomorrow, so he has also participated. He has put forward his own opinion on which chef to invite to cook. Auntie, I heard that Siheyuan in the neighboring yard has graduated and is currently working as a chef in the cafeteria of the Red Star Rail Steel plant. Otherwise, we should look for him. Let's get in touch more and get along well before we can ask some questions, such as how his relationship is with the people in their yard, who might be jealous of him, and who would frame him. Siheyuan, who is it? It's the one who lives in the main room next door with a girl, Zhang Yu reminded. Oh, you're talking about, silly pillar. I'm used to hearing silly pillar and shouted loudly, but I still couldn't react for a while. Zhang Guifang patted her forehead and continued, I only know that his father, He Daqing, has good craftsmanship, especially when it comes to Tan family cuisine, but I don't know how many layers he has learned. I feel pretty good. I've tried the dishes he made a few times in the cafeteria, and the taste is good. Zhang Yu still has confidence in Siheyuan's craftsmanship. Okay, I'll go to the neighboring courtyard and ask him if he can take on the job later. After discussing the warm room banquet, Zhang Yu shifted the topic to the neighboring courtyard. To be honest, he always had some curiosity about the neighboring courtyard. Auntie, I always feel like the neighboring courtyard is strange. Can you tell me? You're still young, why are you asking about this? Zhang Guifang sighed as she looked at a few pairs of hopeful eyes. Forget it, you're also at the age of your own responsibility. I'll tell you a little bit to avoid being tricked, but if you know something, don't say it casually. We promise not to speak out, Auntie, please speak quickly. In order to please Zhang Guifang and the others, they even brewed a pot of tea and brought it to her hand. In fact, only a few old neighbors who have been living here know about this matter. Take the example of the silly pillar just now. Why did his father run away? He really likes that white widow. Just marry her and run to Baoqing with someone. Zhang Guifang took a sip of water and continued, you should know that Tan family cuisine is one of the official dishes. Tan family cuisine was a family banquet of the late Qing dynasty bureaucrat Tan Zhongjuan. As it was the second year of the Tongji reign, it was also known as the top-ranked dish. There are many precious ingredients that ordinary people cannot afford. Think about it, before the founding of the People's Republic of China, He Daqing only served banquets for ordinary people. Not only for ordinary people, but also for whom? So before dividing the ingredients, he ran away with the widow and left a good ingredient for Siheyuan. The several masters in the courtyard were all established by the street office and various courtyards when the police resources were insufficient in earlier years. At the beginning, it was to prevent enemy spies. At that time, people would be stopped and investigated when walking through alleys and alleys. Inside the courtyard, they looked down without looking up, and it was more convenient to have a manager in charge of each courtyard. Some trivial family matters can be resolved in the courtyard, saving police force. Afterwards, I stayed behind, but there was something special in the neighboring courtyard. Thinking of some strange things that have happened in the neighboring courtyard over the years, Zhang Guifang's eyes are full of strange meanings. The Jia family is the most likely to cause trouble. After their man had an accident, the Jia Zhang family organized a group of people to go to the factory to cause trouble. In order to save face and look good, the factory not only lost money, but also kept the job for Jia Dongshu. However, in reality, the man from the Jia family did not die on duty, he only got involved in private work halfway through. And his original job was also taken over by his uncle's family. After his uncle had an accident, the children at home were young and could only be taken over by Jia Dongshu's father. Before taking over, it was agreed that the child would be sent back when they were old enough, but as you can see, now it has become Jia Dongshu taking over. His uncle's child has been causing trouble several times, but in the end, the factory coordinated to give another branch a spot to suppress this matter. End of this chapter.